Okay, Spanish is here. I'm not sure about the other booths. Okay.
George, is there a way to increase the volume for the second video?
There's not. I was full tilt on my computer. That's the full volume on my end. It's low. Yeah, it's the recording. She's very hard to hear.
All right, we're back live now, so careful.
I'm ready to go live when you are. Okay, we will be going live in 15 seconds. We'll be going live in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and going live.
Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, fellow movement members, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings in Yahweh from the Marshall Islands. It is an honor for me to be here with you today. I would like to first express my gratitude to the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent for organizing this virtual climate summit, and for this opportunity for me to deliver this keynote on behalf of the Republic of the Marshall Islands. As we come together virtually, I wish to begin by expressing my deep condolences for the many loved ones that we have lost to COVID-19. I also extend my sincere solidarity and support to those that continue to suffer by this pandemic around the globe. Also, I would like to take a moment to honor all national societies and the movement in general for their efforts and leadership in addressing the pandemic. The Red Cross, Red Crescent movement has from its onset and by the virtue of the fundamental principles, placed humanity at its very forefront, in spite of all the challenges. Even now, in the midst of response to global and pandemic, the movement is maintaining a focus on a number of important issues, including the very climate crisis we're also confronted with. As a low-lying atoll nations, the Marshall Islands, we welcome the movement's focus on the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. The urgency of responding to climate change is clear. Inaction would displace millions of people from their homes, disrupt their cultures and very livelihoods, and take a massive toll on our respective economies. As our President, His Excellency David Kavua, reminded our nation, noting that we must maintain focus on the climate change and emergency, even in the midst of ongoing disasters such as COVID-19. President Kavua further delivered, and I quote, My people have been living with the increasingly frequent impacts of climate change for many years now. But we want not only to survive, but to sustain a safe and secure home for our people. This should be the ultimate aim for any leader, unquote. Our small national society just admitted as the 191st member just this past December 2019. Focused not only on climate-related disaster response, but also risk reduction. Just last year, staff and volunteers responded to two key types events by assisting the government's efforts in evacuation along with distribution of relief goods. The strength of the movement was exemplified last year during the initial stages of our dengue fever outbreak as Micronesia Red Cross, whom themselves was also confronted with dengue fever outbreak, as well as American Red Cross and Australian Red Cross assisted our very own national society in the distribution of a life-saving mosquito net. Even now, sister societies are standing together in solidarity to face the COVID-19 pandemic. For some, including the Marshall Islands, the reality of climate change is already here. In many ways, our present is the future of others. Today, sea level rise continue to erode our coastal shores and threaten our very freshwater reserve lands through saltwater intrusion. In Greece, ocean temperatures and ocean acidification threaten the very coral reef systems that provide our main source of food and livelihoods, and also protect us from tidal events and typhoons. These intensifying weather events are clearly and increasingly common and have devastating impacts on us. Just in 2015, Typhoon Naka negatively impacted 3% of our gross domestic product within a single night. We are also experiencing frequent droughts, which occurred in 2013, 2016, and even early part of this year, 2020. Around the same period, we had to declare state of emergency, confronting both dengue fever and subsequently COVID-19. Our traditional leaders, government officials, NGOs, and development partners have continued to work together to respond to this immediate crisis, especially to our most vulnerable. As a main driver of the Paris Agreement and a proud leader of the High Ambition Coalition, Marshall Islands will continue to play a proactive role in adaptation and disaster risk reduction measures. I'm also constantly inspired by the young people of the Marshall Islands and the Pacific Islands in general, many of whom are very committed climate champions, advocating in the global forum and working at home in villages to adapt to the challenges we are facing. I'm pleased to say that we are currently in the process of updating our National Adaptation Plan, our NAP, which we aim to publish soon. This NAP will set our priorities in terms of adaptation and disaster risk reduction. The NAP will be our plan not only to survive, but to build a thriving, safe, and secure future. Only through the support of the international community that we will have the resources that we so desperately need to implement the NAP. In fact, the magnitude of finance required to adopt and provide for our people with the pathway to survival greatly surpasses our GDP and the current international public finance resources. Domestic adaptation and disaster risk reduction measures, led in partnership through our Climate Change Director and the National Disaster Management Office, are conducted in a large part through inclusive and consolidated process with communities and leaders. Neighboring islands are developing disaster management plans and linking implementation to coordinated efforts and commitments. In order for us to successfully adapt, the humanitarian response must first the importance to work together through consolidated process to recognize the specific vulnerabilities of slow onset disaster. To low-lying atoll nation like the Marshall Islands, there is nothing slow about sea level rise or drought. We must move toward a unified ambition goals outlined in the Paris Agreement would be the second point I'd like to emphasize. We cannot afford to have climate change responses that remain uncoordinated and disconnected. In a Marshallese way, we have to phrase Charbali Pendra. This concept refers to all members of the village working together for a common goal. And lastly, we need a drastic alignment of global financial flows to ensure the $1 trillion in investment and aid are timely delivered and compatible with the goals of the Paris Agreement. I must emphasize here that we don't lack the courage or the will to fight climate change effects, but we do lack the resources to implement these ambitious strategies. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we know what we must do. The solutions are already being implemented by countries like the Marshall Islands, but we must collectively scale up our determination, commitment, and funding to achieve what we know is a solution based on science and to ensure that we of today safeguard the future of our children and grandchildren of tomorrow. On a final note, I'd like to add a personal remark that is important that I say this, that we, the Marshallese people, have lived in these islands over the last millennium. And we have every intent and inspiration to stay in these islands for the next millennium. Thank you, stay safe, and komoltada.
Aloha, hello everyone. My name is Tulofi Nikaso and I'm the youth representative for the Tuvalu Red Cross Youth Network. In previous years, the Tuvalu Red Cross has worked in partnership with stakeholders in climate change actions and also are heavily involved in disaster preparedness and response. But for this year, the TRC Youth Network is taking the lead in the momentum of banning single-use plastic here in Tuvalu. The Tuvalu Red Cross Youth Network has been running a number of cleaning campaigns and also workshops here in the main island of Mafutsi. We've also been collecting rubbish from conservation areas, which we have found to have hold different types of plastic washed up to the shore. A message to our leaders today, tomorrow, and the future to involve us youth in every process and every decision making you make to the last details of our future. Tawhai lasti.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes this session. We will be closing this session and this stream in 1 minute. Thanks again, everyone. We'll be closing in about 20 seconds. And this session will be now closed. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a good evening and good morning across the world.